The human soldier chose the least admired alien princess as his partner. Part 1. The Great Hall of the Imperial Palace was the most beautiful place Daniel Cole had ever seen. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds floated inside the building. Thousands of alien nobles filled the room, their silver skin shining like mirrors under the floating lights. Daniel stood with 5 other human soldiers near the entrance. They wore their best military uniforms, pressed and clean. Each of them had been chosen for this moment. The Galactic Alliance Partnership Program was supposed to bring humans and closer together. The plan was simple. Human soldiers would be paired with members of the royal family. They would work together, learn from each other, and show the galaxy that 2 species could become true allies. Daniel was nervous, but he did not show it. He had fought in 3 wars. He had faced death many times. But standing in this alien palace, surrounded by beings who could read minds and lift objects with their thoughts, he felt very small. The Emperor sat on a throne made of floating crystals. His name was Heron, and he was called the Wise by his people. He was tall, even by standards, and his silver skin glowed brighter than anyone else in the room. His eyes were deep purple, and they seemed to see everything at once. Beside the Emperor sat his 7 daughters. The princesses were famous across 100 star systems. The eldest 6 were everything the people admired. They were tall and graceful. Their skin glowed with inner light. Their telepathic powers were strong enough to move mountains. Artists painted their faces. Poets wrote songs about their beauty. Every young dreamed of being like them. But Daniel's eyes moved past the 6 glowing princesses. At the far end of the row, almost hidden in shadow, sat the 7th daughter. Princess Era was different from her sisters. She was short, barely taller than a human woman. Her skin was dull gray instead of shining silver. She sat with her shoulders hunched, as if she was trying to make herself even smaller. While her sisters smiled and waved at the crowd, Era stared at her hands in her lap. Daniel had done his research before coming to this ceremony. He knew that Era was considered a disappointment by her people. Her telepathic abilities were weak. She could barely lift a cup with her mind, while her sisters could throw starships. The nobles called her the Gray One behind her back. Some said she was a punishment from the gods. Others said she should have been sent away at birth. But Daniel had noticed something else in his research. While her sisters attended parties and posed for pictures, Era spent her time in libraries. She studied languages, history, and military strategy. She had written papers about human culture that were more accurate than anything produced by scholars. She understood humans better than any of her people. The ceremony began with loud music and bright lights. The Emperor stood and spoke in a booming voice that filled the hall. Today we strengthen the bond between our great empire and the humans of Earth. These brave soldiers have come to join with our royal daughters. Together, they will serve the Alliance and bring peace to the galaxy. The crowd cheered. The 6 elder princesses stood and walked forward, arranging themselves in a line. They smiled with perfect teeth and glowing faces. The human soldiers shifted nervously, each one eyeing the princess he hoped to claim. "Human soldiers," the Emperor continued, "you may now choose your partners." The first soldier rushed forward immediately. His name was Peter, and he was the son of a wealthy Earth family. He dropped to one knee before Princess Era, the eldest and most beautiful daughter. She accepted him with a graceful nod, and the crowd applauded. The second soldier chose Princess N, who was famous for her singing voice. The third chose Princess, who had once defeated an entire enemy fleet with her mind alone. One by one, the human soldiers claimed the celebrated princesses. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stepped forward slowly. The remaining elder princess smiled at him. She was stunning, with silver hair that floated around her head like a halo. She extended her hand, expecting him to take it. Daniel walked past her. The crowd gasped. Smile disappeared. The emperor leaned forward on his throne, his purple eyes narrowing with confusion. Daniel kept walking. He passed the empty chairs where the other princesses had sat. He walked all the way to the end of the row, to the shadowed corner where Era sat alone. She looked up at him with wide violet eyes. Her face showed confusion, then suspicion, then something that might have been fear. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Daniel held out his hand. "I choose you, Princess Era. Will you be my partner?" The silence in the great hall was complete. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the whispers started. Daniel heard the words clearly: mistake, fool, insult. The nobles could not believe what they were seeing. Some laughed quietly. Others shook their heads in pity. Princess's voice cut through the whispers. "Human, you must be confused. My sister is not meant for this program. Surely you want a partner worthy of your species." Daniel turned to face her. His voice was calm but firm. "I know exactly what I want." "But she is nothing," another noble called out. "She has no power, no beauty, no worth. You shame yourself by choosing her." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he controlled it. He had learned long ago that losing his temper never helped anyone. "Where I come from," he said, "we judge people by what they do, not by what they look like. Princess Era has studied my people. She has tried to understand us. That matters more to me than glowing skin or moving objects with your mind." He turned back to Era. She was staring at him as if he had grown a second head. Her hand trembled slightly. "I am not a prize," she said quietly. "I am not a charity case for you to rescue." "I know," Daniel replied. "I am not trying to rescue you. I am trying to find a real partner, someone smart, someone who pays attention, someone who thinks before they act. I watched you during the ceremony. While your sisters were posing for cameras, you were studying us. You were learning. That is the kind of partner I need." Era was silent for a long moment. The whole hall waited. Finally, she reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his. "Very well, human," she said. "I accept." The emperor watched all of this with an unreadable expression. When it was done, he simply nodded and waved his hand. The ceremony continued, and Daniel led Era away from her shadowed corner. As they walked, she kept her eyes forward. "You have made a mistake," she said softly. "They will never respect you now. They will never respect either of us." Daniel smiled slightly. "Then we will have to earn their respect the hard way." Era glanced at him, and for just a moment, something like hope flickered in her violet eyes. Neither of them knew it yet, but this choice would change everything. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when a human soldier and an overlooked princess decided to prove everyone wrong. The human soldier chose the least admired alien princess as his partner. Part 2. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Prime appeared in the viewing window. It was a small planet with purple mountains and orange forests. Two suns hung in the sky, one yellow and one red, painting everything in strange colors. Daniel Cole looked at the planet and felt his heart sink. Prime was the edge of nowhere. It was a border world where nothing important ever happened. The diplomatic outpost there was small and forgotten. This was where the Empire sent people they wanted to disappear. Beside him, Princess Era sat with her hands folded in her lap. She had not spoken much during the 3-day journey from the Imperial Palace. She seemed to be waiting for something, though Daniel was not sure what. "This is our punishment," she said quietly, breaking the silence, "for embarrassing the royal family at the ceremony. My father sent us here to keep us out of sight." Daniel nodded. He had expected something like this. Could be worse. At least the air is breathable. Era looked at him with confusion in her violet eyes. "You are not angry. You could have chosen my sister. You would be on a luxury station right now, attending important meetings, building your career. Instead, you are here, in exile with me." Daniel shrugged. "I have been to worse places, and I meant what I said at the ceremony. I wanted a real partner, not a decoration. The outpost was even smaller than Daniel had expected. It was a single building made of gray metal, sitting on a hill overlooking an empty valley. A handful of soldiers and diplomats worked there, mostly who had also fallen out of favor with the Empire. Their commanding officer was a human woman named Lieutenant Amy. She was short with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been stationed on Prime for 3 years, and it showed. "Welcome to the end of the universe," she said when they arrived. "I hope you were not expecting excitement. The most interesting thing that happens here is when the supply ship arrives every month." She gave them a small room to share. There were 2 beds, a table, and a window that looked out at the Purple Mountains. It was simple and plain, but Daniel had slept in much worse places. The days passed slowly. Their duties were light. They met with local traders and listened to complaints from nearby settlements. They filed reports that nobody would ever read. The other soldiers at the outpost ignored them, except for occasional whispers and pointed looks. Era spent most of her time alone. She read books on her data pad and avoided conversations with the other. Daniel understood. She had spent her whole life being ignored or mocked. Trust would not come easily. One evening, about 2 weeks after their arrival, Daniel found Era sitting on a rock outside the outpost. The twin suns were setting, turning the sky into ribbons of orange and purple. It was beautiful in a strange, alien way. He sat down next to her without asking permission. She tensed but did not move away. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She nodded slightly. "Why did you accept me? At the ceremony. You could have refused. You could have let me look like a fool in front of everyone." Era was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I have spent my entire life being overlooked. My sisters are everything our people admire. They are tall. They are beautiful. They are powerful. I am none of those things. My own father cannot look at me without disappointment in his eyes. My mother died giving birth to me, and some people say that was a sign that I should never have existed." She paused, and Daniel saw something like pain cross her face. "When you walked past my sisters and chose me, I thought it was a joke. I thought you were mocking me. But then I looked in your eyes and I saw something I had never seen before. You were not laughing. You were not pitying me. You were looking at me like I was a person worth knowing." Daniel felt a heaviness in his chest. He had seen prejudice before. He had seen people judged for the color of their skin, the country they came from, the language they spoke. But he had never seen someone treated like they were worthless simply because they did not glow brightly enough. "You are worth knowing," he said simply, "and anyone who cannot see that is blind." Something changed between them after that night. Era began to open up. She told Daniel about her studies, her ideas, her dreams. She was brilliant in ways her people had never bothered to discover. She could analyze a political situation in seconds. She could see patterns that others missed. She remembered everything she read and could connect information from 100 different sources. Daniel taught her what he knew in return. He showed her human fighting techniques, and she learned faster than any student he had ever trained. Her body was not as strong as her sisters, but she was quick and clever. She turned her weakness into an advantage, using her small size to slip past defenses and strike where enemies did not expect. They trained together every morning before sunrise. They studied together every evening after dinner. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, about war and peace, about family and loss, about what it meant to be different in a world that valued sameness. Lieutenant noticed the change. At first, she had Daniel for his choice. She had thought he was wasting his time with the Gray Princess, but as the weeks passed, she saw something remarkable happening. A group of traders came to the outpost with a dispute. 2 settlements were fighting over water rights, and the conflict had turned violent. The previous diplomatic team had failed to resolve the problem. The traders expected the same failure from Daniel and Era. But Era had studied the history of both settlements. She knew their cultures, their traditions, their fears. She found a solution that no one else had seen, a way to share the water that honored both groups equally. Daniel presented the plan with confidence and respect. The traders agreed, and the conflict ended. Word of the success spread slowly through the outpost. Then it spread to nearby stations. Then it reached the ears of people who mattered. More problems came to them. A mining company was cheating local workers. A disease was spreading through a farming community. A smuggling ring was operating in the asteroid belt. Each time, Daniel and Era worked together to find solutions. Each time, they succeeded where others had failed. The other soldiers at the outpost stopped whispering. The who had mocked Era began to watch her with new eyes. Even lieutenants started asking for their advice. One night, after a particularly difficult negotiation, Daniel and Era sat together on their favorite rock. The twin suns had set, and 3 moons hung in the dark sky. "People are talking about us," Era said. "They say we are the best partnership team in the sector." Daniel smiled. "Does that bother you?" "No," she admitted. "It feels strange. My whole life people talked about me with pity or contempt. Now they talk about me with respect. I do not know how to feel about it." Daniel looked at her. In the moonlight, her gray skin did not seem dull at all. It seemed soft and warm, like stone that had been touched by gentle hands. "You earned that respect," he said. "No one gave it to you. You took it. And that is worth more than anything your sisters have ever had." Era turned to face him. For the first time since he had met her, she smiled. It was a small smile, uncertain and fragile, but it was real. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, "for seeing me when no one else would." He nodded. "Thank you for giving me a chance." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the moons cross the alien sky. Neither of them knew that their peace was about to end. Somewhere in the darkness of space, enemies were gathering. A conspiracy was forming. And Daniel Cole and Princess Era would soon face the greatest challenge of their lives. But that night they simply enjoyed the quiet. They had found something rare and precious. They had found each other. The human soldier chose the least admired alien princess as his partner. Part 3. The emergency signal came at midnight. Red lights flashed throughout the outpost on Prime. Alarms screamed in the darkness. Daniel jumped out of bed and grabbed his weapon before he was fully awake. Lieutenant's voice crackled through the communication system. "All personnel to the command center immediately. This is not a drill." Daniel and Era ran through the corridors together. The command center was crowded with worried faces. On the main screen, a map of the sector showed dozens of red dots. Each dot represented an Alliance outpost that had gone dark. 17 stations attacked in the last 6 hours, said grimly. "We have lost contact with all of them. Thousands of people are missing or dead. We do not know who is responsible." The attacks had come without warning. Ships appeared from nowhere, struck with terrible precision, and vanished before anyone could respond. The attackers seemed to know exactly where the defenses were weakest. They seemed to know the patrol schedules, the security codes, the emergency protocols. "This is not random violence," Daniel said, studying the map. "Look at the pattern. They are hitting supply lines and communication relays. Someone is trying to cut the Alliance off from the outer sectors." Era nodded slowly. Her violet eyes moved across the screen, taking in every detail. "They have inside information. This level of precision requires knowledge that only Alliance officers would have." The room fell silent. The implication was clear. There was a traitor somewhere in the Alliance, possibly many traitors, feeding information to the enemy. 3 days later, Admiral Grant summoned all partnership teams to the Alliance flagship, Starward Dawn. The massive ship hung in orbit above a gas giant, surrounded by a fleet of warships. Security was than Daniel had ever seen. The council chamber was filled with important people. Admirals and generals sat at a long table. The 6 elder princesses stood with their human partners, each group wearing expensive clothes and superior expressions. Daniel and Era stood at the back of the room, almost invisible among the crowd. Princess Era, the eldest daughter, spoke first. Her voice rang with confidence. "The attacks are clearly the work of the Syndicate. They have hated the Alliance since we blocked their expansion into the mining colonies. We should strike back immediately with overwhelming force." Her human partner, Peter, nodded eagerly. "I agree completely. We have the ships. We have the weapons. We should destroy them before they can attack again." Other partnership teams voiced similar opinions. They wanted war. They wanted revenge. They wanted to show the galaxy that the Alliance was strong. Era leaned close to Daniel and whispered in his ear, "They are wrong. This is not the—" Daniel looked at her. "How do you know?" "The attack pattern. Look at the sequence of targets." She pulled up a small display on her wrist device. The stations were hit in a specific order. It forms a code, an ancient cipher that was used by House before they were exiled 300 years ago. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. House, the ones who tried to kill the royal family. "Everyone believes they died out," Era said. "But this cipher proves they survived. They have been hiding, waiting, planning, and now they are making their move." Daniel raised his hand. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at the human soldier from the forgotten outpost. "Admiral Grant, if I may speak." The admiral nodded. He was a large man with a face and hard eyes. "Go ahead, Sergeant Cole." "My partner has discovered something important. The attacks may not be the work of the— There is evidence suggesting a different enemy, one from within the Empire itself." Princess Era laughed coldly. "Ridiculous. What could the Gray One possibly know that our intelligence officers have missed?" Era stepped forward. Her voice was steady, though Daniel could see her hands trembling slightly. "The attack pattern follows a cipher used by House. They were exiled for treason 300 years ago, but this proves they still exist. More importantly, the precision of these attacks suggests they have allies inside the Alliance. High-ranking allies who have access to classified information." The room erupted in angry voices. Nobles shouted denials and accusations. Some demanded that Era be removed from the council. Others called her a fool and a liar. But Admiral Grant raised his hand for silence. His eyes studied Era with new interest. "Can you prove this theory, Princess?" "Given time and resources, yes," Era replied. "The cipher points to a specific location, a region of uncharted space called the Nebula of Shadows. If I am right, we will find the enemy base there." Era shook her head in disgust. "Father would be ashamed to see you spreading such fantasies. You know nothing of war, sister. You should return to your books and let the real warriors handle this." Daniel felt his anger rising. He stepped forward to stand beside Era. "With all respect, Princess, your sister has been right about everything so far. She solved problems on Prime that nobody else could solve. Maybe you should listen to her instead of dismissing her because you do not like what she has to say." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Era's eyes flashed with fury, but she said nothing. Admiral Grant made his decision. The main fleet will prepare for a confrontation with the— But Sergeant Cole and Princess Era will investigate this other theory. Take a small ship and whatever supplies you need. Report back in 1 week. It was not a vote of confidence. It was a way to get rid of them without causing a scene. But Daniel and Era accepted the mission gratefully. They left the Starboard Dawn that same day. Their ship was small and fast, designed for stealth rather than combat. Lieutenant volunteered to join them, along with 2 soldiers from Prime who had grown to respect the unlikely partnership. The journey to the Nebula of Shadows took 4 days. The nebula was a massive cloud of dust and gas that blocked all sensors and communications. Ships had disappeared inside it for centuries. Most people avoided it completely. Daniel piloted the ship carefully through the swirling clouds. Era sat beside him, watching the sensors for any sign of danger. "There," she said suddenly, pointing at the screen. "A power signature. Something big is hiding in the center of the nebula." They found it an hour later. A space station, hidden perfectly within the dust clouds. It was old, built in a style that had not been used for centuries. Dozens of ships surrounded it, armed and ready for war. "House," Era whispered. "They have been building this for hundreds of years." Daniel's blood ran cold as he studied the station. It was far larger than they had expected. This was not a small group of exiles. This was an army. They recorded everything they could see. Ships, weapons, defenses. Then they went deeper, risking discovery to gather more information. They intercepted communications and decoded messages. What they learned was worse than anything they had imagined. House had not been working alone. They had allies within the Empire, powerful nobles who shared their hatred of the Alliance. The leader of the conspiracy was a lord named Ran, a member of the Emperor's own council. And their plan was almost complete. In 3 days, during the Unity Festival, they would assassinate Emperor Heron. They would blame the attack on humans. The Alliance would shatter. The Empire would turn against Earth, and House would rise from the shadows to take control of everything. Daniel looked at Era. Her face was pale with shock. "We have to warn them," she said. "We have to stop this." But as they turned to leave, alarms began to sound throughout the enemy station. They had been detected. "Get us out of here," Daniel shouted. The chase began. Enemy ships poured out of the station like angry insects. Daniel pushed their small vessel to its limits, dodging through the nebula's dangerous clouds. Explosions lit up the darkness around them. They escaped by the narrowest margin, jumping to faster than light speed just as enemy weapons locked onto their position. But they both knew the truth. The enemy knew they had been discovered. The conspiracy would move faster now. They had 3 days to save the Emperor, save the Alliance, and prove to everyone that the least admired princess was worth more than all her sisters combined. The race against time had begun. The human soldier chose the least admired alien princess as his partner. Part 4. The small ship raced through space at maximum speed. Daniel Cole sat at the controls, his face tight with worry. They had escaped the enemy base in the nebula of shadows, but they were running out of time. The Unity Festival was only 2 days away. If they did not warn the Emperor before then, everything would be lost. Era worked at the communication console trying to send a message to the Alliance fleet, but every channel was blocked. The conspirators had been thorough. They had agents everywhere, watching every communication relay, intercepting every signal. "It is no use," she said finally, frustration clear in her voice. "Every time I try to send a message, it gets redirected or jammed. Lord Ran has eyes everywhere." Lieutenant leaned over the console, studying the data. "What about going directly to the Starward Dawn? We could deliver the information in person." Daniel shook his head. "The fleet is 3 days away at maximum speed. We would arrive after the assassination." "Then we go to the source," Era said quietly. "We go directly to the enemy. We infiltrate the conspiracy and stop them from the inside." Everyone stared at her. The 2 soldiers from Prime exchanged worried glances. "That is suicide," said. "They know we have the information. They will be looking for us." Era smiled, and there was something cold in her expression that Daniel had never seen before. "They will be looking for Princess Era, the 7th daughter of the Emperor. They will not be looking for a gray-skinned servant girl. My whole life, people have looked right through me. Now I will use that against them." The plan was dangerous but simple. Era would disguise herself as a common servant and infiltrate the conspiracy's meeting on the planet Ara, where Lord Ran was gathering his allies for a final council before the assassination. Daniel would pose as a human mercenary, a traitor willing to sell information about Earth's defenses for the right price. If they could get close enough to Lord Ran, they could capture evidence of the conspiracy that could not be. Then they would escape and broadcast the truth to every ship in the Alliance. Lieutenant and the two soldiers would wait with the ship, ready to extract them at a moment's notice. "This is insane," said. "You are walking into the heart of enemy territory with no backup and no weapons." Daniel smiled grimly. "I have been in worse situations." Wen demanded. Daniel thought about it for a moment. "I will let you know when I remember one." They arrived at Ara the next morning. The planet was beautiful, covered in forests of crystal trees that sang in the wind. The conspirators had gathered at an ancient fortress built into the side of a mountain. Guards patrolled everywhere. Security was extremely tight. Era transformed herself completely. She wore simple gray clothes that made her dull skin even less noticeable. She changed her posture, bowing her head and shuffling her feet like someone who had been broken by life. She became invisible, just another servant among hundreds. Daniel's transformation was different. He dressed in dark armor and let his face show the hardness that came from years of war. He walked into the fortress openly, announcing himself as a human soldier who had grown tired of serving aliens. "I have information," he told the guards at the gate. "Secrets about Earth's defenses that your master will want to hear. Bring me to Lord Ran." The guards searched him carefully and found no weapons. They led him into the fortress, through halls decorated with the symbols of house. Everywhere Daniel looked, he saw evidence of the conspiracy's power. Soldiers, weapons, ships. They had been building this army for generations. Lord Ran received him in a chamber of black stone. The Lord was tall and thin, with silver skin so pale it was almost white. His eyes were red instead of purple, a mark of his ancient bloodline. He sat on a throne of bones, watching Daniel with cold amusement. "A human traitor," Rand said. "How interesting. Your species is known for its loyalty. What could possibly make you turn against your own kind?" Daniel had prepared his lies carefully. Loyalty to what? Earth treats its soldiers like tools. We fight and die for leaders who do not care about us. When the Alliance falls, I want to be on the winning side. Rand studied him for a long moment. Daniel felt the pressure of telepathic probes pushing against his mind, searching for deception. He focused on his cover story, burying his true thoughts deep where they could not be found. "Perhaps you are telling the truth," Rand said finally. "And perhaps you are a spy. It does not matter. In 2 days the Emperor will be dead, the humans will be blamed, and the galaxy will burn. You can share in our victory or you can die with your species. The choice is yours." Daniel bowed his head, hiding the anger in his eyes. "I choose to live." For the next day, Daniel played the role of the perfect traitor. He attended meetings where the conspirators discussed their plans. He memorized names, faces, and details. He learned that the assassination would take place during the Emperor's speech at the Unity Festival. A bomb hidden in the viewing platform would kill the Emperor and blame would fall on a human delegation that had been carefully framed. Meanwhile, Era moved through the fortress like a ghost. No one noticed her. No one cared about the gray servant who cleaned floors and carried trays. She listened to private conversations and secret documents. She found proof that would destroy the conspiracy forever. On the second night, they met in a storage room deep in the fortress. "I have everything," Era whispered, showing Daniel a small data chip. "Names, plans, financial records, proof of Lord Rand's treason and everyone who supports him." Daniel felt relief wash over him. "Then we need to leave, now." But as they turned toward the exit, the door burst open. Guards flooded into the room, weapons raised. Lord Rand walked in behind them, a smile of triumph on his pale face. "Did you think I would not recognize the Gray Princess?" he said. "Your disguise was good, but your eyes betrayed you. The same eyes that your mother had before I had her killed." Era froze, her face went pale with shock. What? Rand laughed. You thought she died in childbirth. No, little princess. I poisoned her because she discovered our conspiracy too soon. Your existence has been a thorn in my side for 20 years. Now I can finally remove it. Daniel moved without thinking. He grabbed the nearest guard's weapon and fired. The bolt of energy struck Rand in the shoulder, spinning him around. Then Daniel was fighting, using every skill he had learned in a lifetime of war. The battle was brutal and fast. Daniel was outnumbered 10-1, but he fought with a fury that surprised even himself. He broke bones and threw bodies. He used the tight space of the storage room to prevent the guards from surrounding him. Era fought beside him. She was not as strong as the guards, but she was faster and smarter. She used their own movements against them, tripping and disarming them with techniques Daniel had taught her. They broke through the circle of guards and ran. Alarms screamed throughout the fortress. Soldiers poured into the corridors from every direction. The hangar, Era gasped. There are ships there. They fought their way through the fortress, leaving a trail of unconscious guards behind them. Daniel took a wound to his arm and another to his leg, but he kept moving. He would not stop. He could not stop. They reached the hangar just as Lord Rand caught up with them. His shoulder was burned and his face was twisted with rage. Kill them both, he screamed. Kill them now. A dozen soldiers raised their weapons. Daniel pushed Era behind him, shielding her with his body. Then an energy blast struck Rand from behind. Lieutenant appeared in the doorway of a small shuttle, weapon in hand. Get in, she shouted, now. Daniel grabbed Era and ran. More blasts flew around them as provided cover fire. They reached the shuttle and dove inside just as the ramp closed. Go, Daniel yelled. The shuttle lifted off and burst through the hangar doors. Enemy ships scrambled to pursue them, but was an excellent pilot. She dodged and weaved through the crystal forests, using the terrain to block enemy weapons. As they raced toward space, an explosion shook the shuttle. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. We are hit, shouted. Engines are failing. Era stumbled forward, clutching the data chip. We have to broadcast the evidence before we crash, before it is too late. Daniel looked at the communication console. It was still working. They had one chance. Do it, he said. Era's fingers flew across the controls. She connected to every alliance channel, every news network, every ship in the sector. She uploaded everything. The names, the plans, the proof. People of the Alliance, she said, her voice steady despite everything. I am Princess Era of the Empire. The attacks on Alliance stations were not the work of they were orchestrated by traitors within our own empire. Lord Rand and House planned to assassinate my father and blame humanity. Here is the proof. The transmission ended just as the engines died completely. The shuttle began to fall. Daniel grabbed Era and held her tight. Brace for impact, he shouted. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Era's violet eyes, filled with fear and something else. Something that looked like love. The human soldier chose the least admired alien princess as his partner. Part 5. Daniel Cole woke to the sound of soft beeping. His body ached everywhere. His head felt like it had been split open and put back together wrong. He tried to move, but pain shot through his chest and forced him to lie still. He was in a medical bay. The walls were white and clean, and floating machines hovered around his bed, monitoring his vital signs. Through a window, he could see stars drifting slowly past. He was on a ship, a large one from the smoothness of the movement. A door opened, and a doctor entered. She was tall and silver-skinned, with kind eyes that reminded Daniel of someone he could not quite remember. You are awake, she said, checking the machines around his bed. Good. You have been unconscious for 3 days. You have broken ribs, internal bleeding, a fractured skull, and more burns than I can count. By all rights, you should be dead. Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The doctor gave him water, and he drank gratefully. "Era," he managed to say, "where is she?" The doctor smiled. "The princess is alive. She was injured in the crash, but not as badly as you. She has been sitting by your bed every day, waiting for you to wake up. I finally convinced her to rest an hour ago." Relief flooded through Daniel, warm and overwhelming. She was alive. They had survived. "What happened?" he asked. "The transmission, did it work?" The doctor's smile grew wider. "It worked. The whole galaxy heard Princess Era's message. The evidence was undeniable. Lord Ran and his conspirators were arrested within hours. The assassination was prevented. The Emperor is safe." Daniel closed his eyes and let out a long breath. They had done it. Against all odds, they had actually done it. Over the next few days, Daniel learned more about what had happened after the crash. Their shuttle had gone down in the crystal forests of Aura. Alliance rescue teams had found them buried in the wreckage, barely alive. Lieutenant had survived with only minor injuries. The two soldiers from Prime had not been so lucky. They had died in the crash, heroes who would never be forgotten. The broadcast had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every news network played Era's message on repeat. The names of the traitors became known to everyone. Lord Ran was captured trying to flee the planet. The members of House were hunted down and arrested. The conspiracy that had been building for 300 years was destroyed in a single day. When Daniel was strong enough to walk, he went to find Era. She was standing on an observation deck, watching the stars through a massive window. She turned when she heard his footsteps, and her face lit up with a smile that made his heart skip. "Daniel," she said, rushing forward to meet him, "you should be resting. The doctor said your bones need time to heal." "I have rested enough," he replied. "I wanted to see you." They stood together at the window, looking out at the infinite darkness. Era's hand found his, and their fingers intertwined. "My father wants to see us," she said quietly. "He is on the starward dawn, waiting. The Unity Festival has been postponed until you are well enough to attend." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why would the Emperor postpone a festival for me?" Era laughed softly. "Because you saved his life, Daniel. Because you saved the Alliance. Because you proved that humans are exactly what my father always hoped you would be, partners worthy of trust." They traveled to the starward dawn together. The massive flagship was even more impressive than Daniel remembered. But this time, instead of being hidden in the back of a crowded room, they were escorted to the Emperor's private chambers. Emperor Heron looked older than he had at the partnership ceremony. The weight of the conspiracy had aged him, but his eyes were clear and bright as he looked at his youngest daughter and the human soldier who had chosen her. "You saw what my finest intelligence officers could not see," the Emperor said to Era. "You showed courage that would humble our greatest warriors. You risked everything to save an empire that never treated you with the respect you deserved." He paused, and his voice grew softer. "I have been blind, daughter. For 20 years I looked at you and saw only what you were not. I never bothered to see what you truly were. Forgive me." Era's eyes filled with tears. "Father, The Emperor raised his hand gently. "You do not need to say anything. Words cannot undo the pain I have caused you, but I hope that actions can begin to heal it." He turned to Daniel next. His gaze was intense, searching. "Sergeant Cole, your species never stopped surprising us. You saw value where we saw none. You chose loyalty over prestige. You fought beside my daughter when everyone else would have abandoned her. Tell me, why did you truly choose her at the ceremony?" Daniel thought carefully before answering. "Your Majesty, humans have made a lot of mistakes throughout our history. We have judged people by the color of their skin, the place they were born, the god they. We have overlooked and dismissed people who turned out to be extraordinary. I learned from those mistakes. I looked at Princess Era and saw someone brilliant, someone thoughtful, someone who deserved a chance to show what she could do. I chose her because I knew she would be the best partner I could ever have." He glanced at Era, who was watching him with shining eyes. "And I was right," he added. The Unity Festival was held 3 weeks later, after Daniel had fully recovered. It was the largest celebration in the history of the Galactic Alliance. Ships from 1,000 worlds gathered to honor the heroes who had saved them from destruction. Daniel stood in the great hall of the Starward Dawn, wearing a new uniform covered in medals he had never asked for. Era stood beside him, dressed in robes of silver and white that made her gray skin glow in the soft light. She looked beautiful, Daniel thought. Not by standards, perhaps, but by his standards, she was the most beautiful person in the room. The Emperor gave a speech about unity, trust, and the power of true partnership. He spoke of the courage shown by Daniel Cole and Princess Era. He spoke of the sacrifice made by Lieutenant and the soldiers who had given their lives. He spoke of a new future, where humans would stand together as equals. Then, to everyone's surprise, he called his daughters forward. The 6 elder princesses walked to the front of the hall. They were as tall and beautiful as ever, their silver skin glowing with inner light. But something had changed in their eyes. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like shame. Princess Era stepped forward. She approached Era slowly, then dropped to one knee before her youngest sister. "I was wrong," she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "I treated you with cruelty and contempt. I dismissed you because you were different. I was a fool and I am sorry." One by one, the other sisters knelt as well. Each offered their own apology, their own admission of guilt. Era listened to them all with quiet dignity, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I forgive you," she said finally. "All of you, we are sisters. Let us start again." After the ceremony, Daniel was offered everything he could have wanted: promotions, wealth, command of his own fleet. He declined them all. Admiral Grant found him standing on the observation deck, watching the celebration through the window. "You could have anything," the Admiral said. "Why refuse it all?" Daniel smiled. "Because I already have what I want." Era appeared beside him, as if summoned by his thoughts. She slipped her hand into his and they stood together, watching the stars. "Where will you go now?" Admiral Grant asked. Daniel looked at Era. She looked back at him. In her violet eyes, he saw everything he needed to see. "Wherever she goes," he said, "we are partners." Era smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. She would never be considered beautiful by their standards, but Daniel did not care about their standards. He had learned long ago that the people others overlooked were often the ones who changed everything. He had come to the Alliance looking for a partner. He had found something far more valuable. He had found someone who saw him clearly, just as he saw her. He had found someone who challenged him, supported him, and made him better than he was alone. He had found love. Together they left the celebration behind. Their ship was waiting for them, fueled and ready for whatever adventure came next. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. There were problems to solve, people to help, and wrongs to make right. The human soldier and the alien princess walked side by side into the unknown, ready to face whatever the future would bring. This was not an ending, it was only the beginning.